Okay, so this next one is going to be very difficult to work with because I'm trying to present the method, the methodology of what we're going to do when we're actually walking through Africa, what guidelines we're going to follow. And it's very important because we have to interact with so many different people and so many different industries from different areas. I would say the key word for me, what I've been looking for all the time, is to find some kind of cohesion. That's the key word. I know I'm looking for comprehensive corporate social responsibility, but the key word to get there would have to be cohesion. And I can argue that it's the lack of cohesion that has made things fail to the point of where we have seen a return of military coups, because you find that the military is more efficient than democracy. So because of the lack of cohesion, democracy has failed in Africa. When I started out this project, when I got the initial inspiration to do this, that was in 2003, and just 2 years before, NEPAD had published, had come into being, and I was reading through the manifesto in 2003, and the what you said, the summary of the argument was that the majority of African countries had moved away from from military dictatorships, from dictatorships and from military dictatorships, because two different types, um, and um, and so that was one of the great arguments. Is that okay? Now Africa is on a platform where they can meet the rest of the world, and this and that and that and this, and the argument is fantastic. It's a great tool to have. It's slightly outdated now because you'd have to review it. You can see now there's been a return of military coups. When the first one started coming in, it was like, what's going on? And then it's now you actually have several countries that have returned to military rule, and but with a different approach altogether. It's as though they have learned some rules that want to be efficient in a certain way. It's some kind of accountable military, what do you say, government. Mm, it is preferable for me to actually have democracy for obvious reasons, and but efficient democracy, and for that to work we need cohesion. So what is it that's missing? Well, that's what we want to find out, and that's what we really want to make sure that is the how could I say, the parameters that I'm going to be working with is the cohesion. I can give you a small example. Um, for example, when I reached Neisner, let me say Neisner because we're going to have a soup kitchen there now, so it's a good place to show this. When I reached Neisner, I by the way, I had already overstayed, so I was illegal in the country. But that did not stop me from trying to get in touch with the municipality, because wherever I went to do anything, I needed to go and have some kind of contact with the municipality, because whether I was legal or illegal, that was a different case. The project must have some kind of framework that the municipality agrees to, because of course at some point I would fix my legal status, in the future would actually work with very legal acceptable manners, and that's what I'm coming back to do. I had to pay the price. I was banned from South Africa for 5 years, you know, and so what I would say is, okay, so I went to the municipality and I was received very well, and I saw some of the ideas. What shocked me the most was that there were many good initiatives on paper, and the officials there believed in them too, right? And then what shocked me the most when I was in the ghetto and talking to people was that most of the people in the ghetto did not know that these initiatives existed on paper, and their idea of what people were doing in the municipality was totally different from what the municipality was doing. So it was disjointed. So from then on, I knew, look, there's a lack of communication, and how do you actually make sure there is communication? It's not as easy as saying, hey, we got a project that's on paper, and people would understand what that is. It is two different cultures. The hustler's culture and the administrator's culture is two different cultures. They and all the conditioning and everything. This is where we're going to need a lot more analysis of the situation. So that's why I say it's not. It's very easy to say emancipate yourself from mental slavery, and to say Africa unite. It's very easy to say it, but do you know what kind of things are actually keeping the cohesion from happening? I mean, it's a tragedy when you actually have people who mean well on both sides, but just don't share the same work culture. You know, and that broke my heart to see that. So a lot of what I'm creating now is I realized we needed to create platforms for public participation, whether or not people understood what was on paper or what was on the ground. If it made sense to you because it is tailor made for you as an employee or as a civil servant in the municipality, and it makes sense for you, I can make so that that is compatible with something that makes sense to somebody who's a hustler or a higgler, or a person selling fruit on the market. That's why these platforms were so important. That's why comprehensive corporate social responsibility can only function with all these different platforms as components that basically meet people where they are and enhance them and make them compatible with each other. So that is what the main conversation on the bus is going to be. And also, as we walk, that's what the conversation is going to be. And I will narrow myself down to that, because I totally believe that being able to do that and having that conversation will in the future, it can do two things. One, it can actually avoid the need or lead us into the situation where there has to be a military coup, and it can also make military coups that exist now more humane or more democratic. You see, and this is the bridge that we need to build. This is the bridge of love that we need to build from Cape Town to Cairo, in terms of the governance and the platform for the governance. Now, Denmark is a very good example. The egalitarian society in Denmark, it did take an effort from the people to say, look, I mean, knowledge was kept away from the people for a while until the people decided that, look, we need to have knowledge. So that's why one of the patrons in my Danish model is Grundtvig, and his entire movement of educating the people, by the people, for the people. That was a success story, and that's why Denmark is the way because it is or was, you know, it has been betrayed, and again, it's because the cohesion has disappeared. The connection to the farms, the connection to farmland, the connection to actually living on a farm has done a lot to erode the Danish identity, to where the Danish identity now looks more into identifying with ideas that are brought in from mainly America. So that would be Hollywood and such things. So there's a shift from being practical to being, I don't even know. I don't even know what word to use for it. But the practicality that you had when people were based, even the political parties have changed. So you have political parties that came out of what you call it, trade unions, and which were so connected to the trade. So the fishermen have theirs, and the nurses would have theirs, and the farmers, and so any politician who was there was just a step away from being a trade union leader, and that makes you very accountable to your people. But as people kind of like moved away, and society moved away from that, and you have more and more people being employed in the public sector, a lot gets lost. So, ironically, my argument, this is my analysis. It the private sector always tends to be more sensible than the public sector, which means that the right wing parties tend to be more sensible than left wing parties, because left wing parties end up in all these this whole plethora of ideologies and idealism and everything. Whereas when you do business, you do business, so you've got to stick to how you do business, and that's where the right wing basically keeps their feet on the ground. And so I'm neither for or against those things. I just look at how that dynamics work, and I take that on board. There is absolutely no way that ideology is going to be the deciding factor on how we're going to work towards our solutions on this walk. Ideology is totally out the window. It's just a non-starter. It doesn't exist whatsoever. We just going to look at dynamics and trends. And if we look for cohesion, then we'll find that no matter where we look, whether you look into Muslim culture or Christian culture or hunter-gatherer culture or a Boer culture, no matter, or freedom fighter culture, the cohesion of what you do, once cohesion is important to you, then you have common ground with everybody else, including your so-called or so perceived enemy.